Hello there and welcome back on the channel Glaryon. Today I want to talk about a common misconception that comes with the concept of green energies. But before dive into the analysis, I want to make a fast disclaimer. I strongly support renewable energy sources and I think it would be a really good thing if every nation relies only on them. But many people think that renewable energy sources or green energy sources doesn't affect the environment. There are also people who think that renewable energy sources are good for the environment, which is nuts. Every energy source, regardless what source you take, has a certain impact on the environment and has a certain impact on the climate. Without a doubt, renewable energy sources are better than carbon fossil fuels. But we have to know that also renewable energy sources have an environmental impact. And no energy in the universe is for free. When we talk about environmental impact and climate change, usually we consider only global warming, the phenomenon for which the average temperature of the planet is increasing. We do so for two main reasons. The first is that we only talk about global warming, and the second is that global warming is the easiest environmental impact that we can see and measure. But environmental impact consists in a large number of different phenomena, different factors that are occurring at that we have to take in account. Let's talk briefly about the most common renewable energy sources that are used in the world. We have solar energy, wind energy, hydroelectric energy, geothermal energy, and biomass. Solar energy uses photovoltaic implants to turn the energy of the sun into electrical energy. Wind and hydroelectric use the movement of a fluid, the air or the water, to rotate some turbines and create electrical energy. Geothermal uses the natural heat that comes from the earth to produce electrical energy, and biomass uses the decomposition of organic material to produce electrical energy. Before going on, I want to do a little disclaimer about another energy source that is not considered a green one: the nuclear energy. Nuclear energy is electrical energy that is produced using nuclear reactions. I will talk also about this kind of energy, and at the end of the video I will tell you why it's not considered a green energy source. Let's start with the easy things: global warming. Global warming is caused by greenhouse gases, which are gases that increase the greenhouse effect. In particular, these gases keep the infrared solar rays inside the atmosphere, causing a temperature increase. The most famous of these gases are carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, CFCs, and a lot of different gases. Also water vapor, to be honest. The most common is carbon dioxide, the gas that we breathe and also that is produced every time we burn something. And carbon dioxide has become a problem due to the Industrial Revolution, where combustion engines were invented and were used for basically everything. Fossil fuels such as carbon and petroleum produce a lot of carbon dioxide because they are based on combustions. And nowadays, almost 75% of the total human emissions of greenhouse gases are caused by energy production. So it's very important to reduce the amount of greenhouse gases that are generated for our energy production. And here's the thing: renewable energy sources produce less carbon dioxide, but they still produce some carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is not only produced in combustions, but every time we turn some form of energy into electrical energy, some carbon dioxide is naturally produced. It means that every possible energy source will produce a certain quantity of carbon dioxide, always. The worst renewable energy in terms of emission is hydroelectric energy. Hydroelectric power plants produce around 40% of the same amount of emissions that are produced by fossil fuels to generate the same amount of energy, around 420 grams per kilowatt hour. Then we have solar energy at around 300 grams per kilowatt hour produced. Next in line, we found biomass with around 150 grams per kilowatt hour, then wind energy at around 90 grams per kilowatt hour, and last but not least, nuclear energy at around 40 grams per kilowatt hour, making it the energy source with the least amount of greenhouse gases produced. And this is the easy part, the one that revolves around greenhouse gases emissions. But as I said before, environmental impact does not account only for greenhouse effect. The first thing we have to consider is the materials that are used to create these power plants. There are some materials called critical raw materials that are rare on our planet. And renewable energy sources tend to use a lot of these critical raw materials. These chemical elements are rare to find, and some of them can be extracted only in a single nation in the entire planet, making them very important from an economical and geopolitical point of view. Wind and hydroelectric power plants requires some permanent magnets, which are created using neodymium, dysprosium and terbium. And also they require corrosion resistance materials such as chromium, molybdenum and manganese. The truly difficult one in this case is solar energy, which requires an entire plethora of rare things: indium, cadmium, germanium, gallium, selenium, tellurium are all elements that are required to build photovoltaic cells. So every time we consider renewable energy sources, we have also to consider the environmental impact due to the extraction of these critical raw elements, which creates a lot of both environmental and social problem in developing countries. Again, last but not least, nuclear energy that requires only uranium to be produced. Uranium is very easily soluble in water, so to be extracted you just need to pump some water in the ground where uranium is present and then take it back. Very easily, very cost effective, very small environmental impact. Then we have water consumption. Besides wind energy, all the other energy sources require a certain amount of water to be produced. The worst ones, of course, are hydroelectric power plants, which requires up to 17,000 liters per megawatt hour produced. Again, the most effective is nuclear energy, which requires only 1,500 liters per megawatt hour produced. Solar, biomass and geothermal energy requires from 2 to 4 times the amount of water required by nuclear energy. So this time nuclear energy gets a silver and the gold medal goes to wind. Then we have land use, the amount of surface that is required to build the power plant. Let's start from nuclear power plants this time. Nuclear power plants require 0.6 square meters for each gigawatt hour produced. Is it a lot? Is it a little? Let's see. Hydroelectric power plants requires around 50 square meters for each gigawatt hour produced, almost 100 times more than nuclear energy. Wind power plants require 300 square meters for each gigawatt hour produced. And this time the elephant in the room is a solar power plant, which requires 1,300 square meters for each gigawatt hour produced, which is a fucking lot. We have to say that solar power plants can be built above existing building, reducing the amount of land needed. Considering the surface we have already covered with buildings, to create new solar power plants, we would require around 500 times the same surface required with nuclear energy plants. So, in terms of land use, nuclear energy easily outruns every other renewable energy source. Last but not least, we have sound and light pollution. Light pollution is not a big deal because energy power plants does not require mandatory light to work, so we can easily avoid light pollution. But sound pollution is very important. When we think about wind turbines, there are a lot of people that complain about the sound of the turbines. There are lots of studies that shows that the constant sound emitted by the turbines create a lot of stress disease and sleep deprivation diseases. And when we do this kind of studies, we only think about human health. But the same things happens to every organism that lives in proximity to the wind turbines. Animals and plants are affected by the sound, and these turbines create a lot of problems to all the organisms in the environment. I know what you're thinking now. Nuclear power plants produce nuclear wastes, and there is this idea that nuclear wastes are very difficult to contain and to monitor. Let me tell you something. The entire energy that an average human uses in his entire life produce a tablespoon of nuclear wastes. A tablespoon for your entire life. And they can be easily contained inside special structures that avoid any nuclear leakage. In the last years between Ukraine and, in these days, Iran, we have seen a lot of nuclear sites attacked, also with bombs, and there were never a nuclear leakage, because it's actually very simple to contain nuclear wastes. And another thing that no one thinks about is that nuclear wastes are completely recyclable. It's not very cost effective, but it's possible. And this is the sad part. You could be thinking, okay, if nuclear energy is better from almost every point of view when we consider environmental impact, why it is not considered a green energy source? And the answer does not rely on science. The only reason behind the fact that nuclear energy is not considered a green energy source, it's because of fear. Nuclear energy is seen as something bad from a social point of view due to the fear that people have in nuclear energy after the events of Chernobyl. And this drives me nuts because there is no real scientific risks behind nuclear energy, and because of a political maneuver that has been done in the last 40 years, nuclear energy is seen as something bad, even if science says that it's completely safe and the best thing we have for the environment. Nuclear energy is emission effective, cost effective, space effective, water effective, sound effective, is everything effective. And the only reason it's not considered green energy is because people have been said that it's dangerous when it's not. And honestly, this is nuts. I mean, all the victims of nuclear power plants in the entire history, almost 80 years of use, amount to around 4,000 people. Each year, due to hydroelectric dams, around 18,000 people die. Every year, hydroelectric power plants kill 4 times the amount of people that has been killed by nuclear power plants in the entire history. Chernobyl was terrible, but it was not an accident. If we take the Fukushima power plants, even with the catastrophic disaster that occurred, there has been 0 victims, and the environment surrounding the nuclear power plants is completely safe, even at a few hundred meters from the power plant. And Chernobyl has become a biodiversity hotspot just because the environments can adapt very easily to radiation. If something is bad for human health, it doesn't mean that it's bad for the environment. I have kept it very simple, but there are a lot of more things that we should consider. For instance, the fact that renewable energy sources are intermittent and they require batteries to accumulate power, and batteries have a lot of environmental impact, and all the lithium on Earth would not suffice the requirement of batteries for the entire humanity. A total use of renewable energy sources would be great, but unfortunately for our technology nowadays, it is not possible. We lack key materials, and we should start seeing things more from an ecological point of view than a human point of view. Besides, also from an economic point of view, nuclear power plants are the most cost effective. I hope this video can help you to better understand that environmental impacts are not only greenhouse gases emission, and we have to consider everything, not only global warming. I am Glaryon, and if you want to know more, be sure to follow me on all my channels.